They say that talking to yourself is a sign of insanity. But I think that's only if you answer back, right? 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 Right. Okay, good. This is Talking to Myself, the art advice podcast where I try to use anecdotes from my life to make myself a better artist, and hopefully a better person. While other people might find this useful, I'm mostly just trying to avoid paying for therapy. Today on the podcast, I thought I'd talk about some percentages that come up in your art practice, your art training. And I'll start with an anecdote. I may have actually mentioned this on the stream before, but it holds true for a lot of different things. I used to work at a video store, one of a large chain. I don't want to give away the name, but it rhymes with Rockbuster. The point is, I was in the managing one of the stores for a while, and we would get this report every morning about the objectives we had for the day. A priority list is what our district manager called it. And he would not order the priorities, but at the bottom of each priority list, there'd be a note saying, these are all your top priorities. I mean, I'm no mathematician or anything like that, but if you're going to give an ordered list of something, they have to have an order. You can't have everything be your top priority. Otherwise, the term has no meaning. And this also relates to the way sometimes coaches or sports people, it comes up a lot with, that maybe aren't necessarily thinking about what they're saying, will say that you have to give 110% all the time. Now, I know that's just a metaphor, but it is also mathematically impossible. It's not impossible to give 110%, I don't think. You can exceed your limits briefly for short periods of time. And that relates to art practice as well. Sometimes you get a really good result. Maybe it's a new technique. Maybe it's something you just felt in the groove about this one piece. That's cool. It is possible to exceed your limits, but you can't expect to consistently exceed your limits, because that would mean those are your limits, if you catch my meaning. It's kind of funny. I'm sort of arguing against myself here. This week's main thrust is to convince myself that I need to put my full effort behind my artwork. Now, a lot of time I'm under a time crunch, or I've got a lot of things going on and I don't have a lot of time to fully commit myself to the artwork. Sometimes I'll be doing something I'm very familiar with. It's almost automatic and it's easy to do, so I don't feel like I need to put my full effort behind it. But that kind of thinking is getting me nowhere. I think that what I really need to do is focus more effort into everything I do artistically. From the simplest little goofy sketch to a full-fledged artwork, a finished piece, for commission or just for myself. I mentioned this before too. I had a fairly easy time with school, and jobs actually, mostly because I took jobs that were easy and didn't require much effort on my part, because I was lazy. But in school, I never really had to try very much until I got to college, and actually a bit into college, like a year and a half into college, I sort of hit a wall where my lack of effort was visibly noticeable and it was detrimental to my life. And the same things happen with art. I can do certain things very easily. I don't find much trouble in drawing some of the things I draw. But I'm doing a collaboration piece right now that requires a human figure. And you wouldn't think that'd be that big a deal. But I'm having to do things I haven't had to do for a very long time, like get a lot of different reference for the pose I want to put, draw it several times in one place. You know, the things that artists do, the things that real professional artists do, quote unquote real artists. You work at it until you have it the way you want it. You don't just go with whatever happens the first time you put a stroke down on the page or screen or whatever it is you're working on. Your first efforts might not be good enough. Maybe you have to do more. You need to work at it until it's as good as you want it to be, as good as it can be. And I've never really been committed to that principle. I've been lazy, basically. I've refused for some reason to commit my full effort to things. Maybe I'm afraid if I commit my full effort and still fail, I don't have any excuse. Whereas if I don't try super hard and I fail, I can go, well, I wasn't trying. Which is, still sounds like an excuse, right? I don't see what's better than that. This is another anecdote from school. I don't think I've mentioned this one before. This is from college also. I had this one class. It was a philosophy class with this crazy teacher. He was one of the people on campus that had a reputation for being nutty. He had tenure, obviously, so he could get away with a lot of stuff. For instance, there was a class where he wanted someone to demonstrate what a rebel yell is. Now, I don't know if you are familiar with this. If you're not from the United States, you have no idea what I'm talking about. If you're not from the southern United States, you may or may not have any idea what I'm talking about. And if you aren't a student of history and you even are from the South, you might not have any idea what I'm talking about. I'm not trying to beat the drum of the Confederacy or anything like that. I am not at all a supporter of the Confederacy or the states' rights argument crap or whatever. That was a totally evil cause, and I'm glad it was defeated. Here's the point. Rebel yell is a battle cry that would rally Confederate troops in times of desperation. So basically what it means is just scream real loud. He sent this kid out in the hallway to do a rebel yell just for like an example. So the kid goes out in the hall, and this is a shared classroom hall, so I'm sure other people were like, what the hell was that? Anyway, this is how crazy this guy was. And he wasn't like a devout Southern or anything either. I think he thought it was kind of funny. I think he was from the Midwest, actually. Anyways, really fond memories of this guy. He was crazy. But one thing he imparted to me in this class that I've tried to bear in mind for most of my life, and it's only come back to me recently when I'm trying to think about this effort situation. It was a little formula he had. P is greater than A. And what that means is procedure is greater than answer. So in terms of scientific endeavor, what that means is if you do everything right in the procedures you're supposed to do, the results are not as important as you doing everything correctly. Because the results may or may not vary based on other outside forces that are not on your control. You have to make sure that you do the procedure correctly to have what amounts to a clear conscience that your data is correct. And he was speaking logically, but that also applies to science in some cases, most laboratory cases. You'd be better off if you get an aberrant result, like a weird anomalous result in your lab results, but your procedures were on point, then you have something there. If you can repeat it, then you've got something serious, significant. But if your procedures are sloppy, there's no way to determine that your result is anything. Doesn't mean anything. So what I've taken that to mean with the art practice lately, what I've been thinking about is the effort's the important thing. You try your hardest on a painting, let's say, and it doesn't come out. For some reason, you just can't nail this, whatever it is, this pose, this anatomy, this lighting, color. And you get to the point where the painting is beyond saving, which happens. It does happen. Sometimes the only way to rework a painting is to paint over it completely and start over. And that happens a lot, and usually it's a good idea, because the second version of it is usually better. But as long as you worked it as hard as you could, as long as you did everything you could think to do, and you tried to research new things, and you looked at an answer as best you could, as long as you put all that effort in, the results are not the most important thing. You've done what you're supposed to do, and you've achieved it. That's what makes it significant. Okay, so message to my future self, as I usually do with these things. Hey, dummy. I know you won't listen to these, as always, but hopefully telling you this will help me remember later. Focus on the effort, not the results. I know you're down a little bit now and then because things don't seem to be paying off for you, or people don't seem to be noticing your art or whatever. Who cares? That doesn't matter. You have to work at the art as hard as you can, make the art as good as you can. The bottom line is, if you put in your best possible effort, you should be proud of that. And you should be happy with that. Because really, isn't that all you can do? Isn't that as hard as you can struggle? The hardest you can? I mean, despite your coach saying, give 110% all the time? Anyway, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to work harder. I'm going to try to put my full efforts into everything, the best I can. Thanks everybody for listening. I really appreciate you being here. Special thanks to my patrons on Patreon. You guys get to hear these a week earlier than everyone else, and you are the shiniest people I know. Hopefully you guys can get a little something out of this. Do your best, and then at least you know you did the best you could. No one can ever fault you for that. Till next time, you guys take it easy.